Ciao everybody, CW here. Let's put a new scope base on this 243. Let's get set up here. Let's get this 458 out of the way. Get the 243 in its place. And let's put a new base on it. And the continued work on this Savage 243. So what we ordered is a Leupold 20 MOA base. So what we got here is an LA20 mat for the Savage 110 round receiver. Now there's a couple different receivers goes on here, so I hope we got the right one. We're going to find out in a few minutes. But it comes with screws, comes with a wrench, and this is a Mark IV one-piece base. Mark IV one-piece base. This thing checks in. It's a solid base. So we're gonna get this scope off it. I can't show you everything because YouTube won't let us do it, but I'm gonna show you bits and pieces. So hopefully we won't break any rules with what I'm going to show you. But I think you got the idea. Most everybody should know how to mount a scope. I'll give you a couple of the pointers and the tips that everybody forgets, or some people forget, and a few of the things that I like to do when I mount a scope. So let me tear this down. I'll take you off here. I'll put you up on the top so you get a nice top view, and we'll come back. So stand by. Okay, here we go. Now here's the bases that we're on here, and you can see that somebody mounted these, and part of the reason why I'm calling them suspect. Now they may be just fine. I didn't check the numbers. I didn't check anything. I didn't shoot the gun. We just swapped this. We swapped this Bushnell Banner 6-18 scope on here. Dusk to Dawn Bushnell Optics. It's a nice scope. It's an inexpensive scope, but it's going to be fine for what I'm going to do with this. It's not going to be a life or death rifle. It's not going to be something I'm going to take on a once-in-a-lifetime hunt. So it's going to be something that I'm not going to be afraid not to spend a pile of money on top-end optics for. But it's going to be good enough. Step up from what was on here. We're going to take this off and put this one on. We're going to check it first. So let's get some screws, get some proper bits, and pull this off. Well, the screw is tight, so I'll give that. We'll see if there's Loctite on them. They feel like there's Loctite on them. It wasn't red because it came off, and it looks like there's some oil under there. See that shiny? That's oil under there. That's going to cause it to fail, because that oil will seep into that Loctite and break it down. It's a little bit of corrosion on top of the gun there. We'll see if we can get that off, make sure that doesn't cause a problem. And now we got to find the right size Allen for these front screws. It's a guessing game. And we may not even have the right size in these bits. Oh, there we go. That's the right one. That's the right one. See, that one wasn't even tight. That screw wasn't even tight. It was just snugged. So there we go. And I don't see any thread locker on there either. All right, let me get this cleaned up and we'll come back. All right, it goes on nice. We got the screws all lined up. We got the screws all started. So now we're just going to change out the screws one at a time and put thread locker on them. So we just put them in. I like red. I use red thread locker. Off camera, I cleaned all the holes. It's a drop of red on there. We've already got it in position. We know it's lined up. There's nothing torqued down. It's just hand tightened down. Everything's cleaned and dry. Nothing that can be twisted or torqued because we got all the screws in just snugged. It's a drop of red on the threads. Turn in. All right, I love this tool. This is just a cheap extension. I think it came from Harbor Freight, but I put a 1/4 inch rare earth magnet in there. And then when you put your bit in, it's extra strong. It'll pick up, it'll pick up a whole bunch of screws. And it's really, really nice, really handy for doing this kind of stuff. And you can turn it by hand with just your fingertips. Really, really nice. Then we got this one on here. So we're just going to go until it's snug. We don't need to go crazy. Want to make sure that there's no twisting and torquing and everything's lined up the way it's supposed to be. You don't want anything really too tight before everything is tight. Just fingertips. When we come back and give it a good sock down. All right, let me give these a final torque. Keep YouTube happy. I'll turn this off and come back when it's on. Stand by. And there's the last one. I'm a firm believer in this tool as well. It gives you a torque setting. You know everything is torqued to the same level. You set it for what you want. And then when you're done, it's really important that you back it off to 0. Because you don't want to, it's just a spring and such in there. So if you torque that spring or you fatigue that spring, your numbers aren't going to be accurate anymore. So you back that off. This is an inch-pound torque wrench. Really handy for bases. I'm not so worried about rings. I do them until they're snug, but you can use it for that as well. And you can look up online for the torque specs based on the size screws. Because coffee, of course, coffee is one of the most important ingredients here. So there we go. So there's our base. Torque down. Very nice. All right, here we go. There's our base on there. Now remember, this is a 20 MOA base. So you want to make sure some of the bases don't have different spacing. So you want to look and see, and it's very important here that you look on the base of the base, on the bottom side of the base, there's a bullet symbol. And the tip of the bullet is pointing towards the muzzle. Because this is a MOA base, it's supposed to be a little bit taller at the back than the front. So it's going to give you that rake. What that's going to do is it's going to allow you, when you set up your scope and sight your rifle in, it's going to allow you to lose a lot of the range on the side of the adjustment of the scope. Because if you think of it this way, you got your reticle in the center of your tube. You've got, let's say, 30 MOA adjustment up and 30 MOA adjustment down. Well, the up adjustment is pretty much useless it's an area you're never going to use, because you don't need to shoot that close to bring your muzzle down. You need the other side of the reticle. You need all the elevation side. So this allows you to cheat some of that elevation and use it for some of your negative elevation, so to bring your muzzle down. Allows you to cheat some of that from there and use it for longer range shots. So instead of sighted in for 100 yards and your reticle on your scope is centered top and bottom with, 30, I'm just using it as a reference. It's not specific, but let's just say 30 MOA adjustment down and 30 MOA adjustment up, and it's sighted dead on 100 yards. So you only have 30 MOA to adjust for range. If you have a 20 MOA base, you're going to have 10 MOA useless. You're going to have 50 MOA for adjustment for range, because you took 20 out of your base. You added 20 in your base. You follow me? Can you envision that? So instead of the scope being level with the bore, you've tipped it up in the back, so you have to adjust your reticle down or up, because everything's backwards in the scope, so it gets confusing, to be on. But you're never going to need to sight it in for closer than 100 yards. So it doesn't matter that you only have, theoretically, 10 MOA adjustment to go shorter distance, because you're never going to use it anyway. So that's how the MOA, positive MOA base works for you. So there we go. So let's put our scope back on here, and we can probably adjust where this ring is, because I like my front ring to be as far out. I like my rings to be spaced as far as they can on the gun. So if we put this where it was, right, it won't quite line up. It's far forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to level this. We're going to level this rifle in this base with levels, okay? And then we're going to come back and we're going to loosen these rings, slide them around, position the scope where we want it, and then adjust the rings to be as far apart as we can to get the biggest footprint that we can on our new base. Again, I'm not going to show it to you. I'm just going to tell you about it. I'm just going to do it, and I'll show you when it's done, because we want to keep YouTube happy. Somehow this is going to harm somebody if I show you how to do this, so we're not going to show you. Tongue-in-cheek. Stand by it really quick. There's our bubble. So our rifle is level, clamped in place. We got another bubble on our scope. And we've already trued this bubble to the reticle. So we know this bubble is level to the reticle. Okay, so we're going to reference this to that. This is going to become this. So when this is in the middle like that, we know the crosshair is dead up and down straight. We'll adjust it after that. So okay, stand by. Just by fingers, we've got the bases of these rings tightened down, just with fingers, so it doesn't move. Now we're going to adjust the scope to level using the bubble to there. Now we'll tighten these screws down. We're going to check eye relief, make sure that's going to be okay, because we may have to change this from where it is, because we pulled the rings as far apart as they can go. You see the gap here. It's just a little bit too close to this to fit. Now I could pull this bubble off, put it in front of the ring, allow the ring to go all the way to the back. But I like my bubbles to be back as far as they can, because they tend to be able to be seen easier. And that little bit of movement of the ring, I don't think is going to make enough difference for it to be warranted. So I'm going to leave it there. So I'm going to break away from you again. I'm going to pull the rifle down. I'm going to shoulder it and make sure that the eye relief on the scope is going to work for my shoulder position, or how I like to shoot. All right, I forgot to mention, we didn't lose anything, because although I took it out of the jig, this didn't move. So that's still on 0, so the scope's still level. All right, what I found was it's a little bit forward. So what I'm going to do is, I want this ring to be way out here. So I'm going to tighten these screws down just snug to lock the scope in. And then I'm going to loosen the screws over here on the side and move the whole scope back one click, one step. All right, So right now, this ring is as far forward as it can go. There's the muzzle up there. So it's as far forward as it can go. So I want it to be one click back to gain me a little eye relief. And then we're going to try it again. So we're going to tighten these rings down to lock the scope in position of our level. Then we're going to loosen the mounts on the side, take the whole scope off, move it back one notch, put it back on, and then check it. Stand by. Okay, snug those rings, loosen the bases, pulled it back one click, put it back on. Here's the movement that's in that Picatinny rail. That's normal. When you tighten your scope down, you want to make sure it's pushed as far forward in that mount as you can. You'd never want it to be back or in the middle. You want it pushed forward against those stops. And then tighten the screws down. Again, I'm not going to show you. There it is. All mounted up. Tools away. Everything is torqued, checked. Now we're going to let this sit for at least 48 hours before we shoot it, before we put any stresses on it, because we want that Loctite to set up. Not a problem for me because we're not going to shoot this for probably a month or so, maybe more. But we've got it on there. So there's the new base, one piece Picatinny style Weaver, Leupold base. That's a Picatinny style, but it'll fit Weaver or Picatinny. I've told you how to do it, showed you what I think I can. Last thing that you want to do is you want to function test the bolt and make sure that everything clears and everything is fine. There we go. Okay, so we got our base on there. Next thing we're waiting for is the pillars, and we'll put the pillars in. Stay tuned. God bless everybody. CW out.